Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Untitled Reviews. This being a show I talk about dramas that I watch. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of Walker Independence. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. Well, first and foremost, we have the whole situation of picking up in the aftermath of the last episode. Callian is going to be hung because there's everything and everyone is kind of believing he did it. Obviously, Gus is looking for every opportunity to be like, hey, tell me, like, give me some evidence to prove that you didn't do it. But for Callian, he saw his sister. We find out the girl that was missing that they never could find. Well, I don't know if it's a different girl, but because I thought like the girl he was referencing when he was talking to Otis last episode, I thought that was that might be the same. That's why I figured was the girl he was seeing. The girl he's seeing is Nasha, his sister, which means owl because she was always curious. There was a raid on their camp like 15 years ago and she was taken, and that's why he became a tracker to try and find her. But this happens from time to time where he sees his sister and he kind of gets in a bit of a daze. Apparently one time it happened a year ago, he turned around and like cut Gus with his blade. But typically, I don't think it's always a violent thing. That's one instance of it, because he talks about it later with Abby, because Nasha has kind of been his guide, takes him where he needs to go. It's like, she's the reason why I found you, Abby, so... And because Abby's taken it upon herself that, like, right, I'm going to help prove, because she knows what kind of person Callian is. It's like, he's a good person, so I'm going to help him. Especially because, like, this is the man who saved my life, and he's been here helping me with this whole trying to expose the Davidsons, try to get justice for Liam situation all the way through. So the least I can do is try to defend him. She's actually the one that pushed the sheriff to try and, like, handle this from a legal standpoint. It's like, right, you were willing to give Griffin, a trial, why can't you give him the same? It's like, well, the problem is he's an outsider, and they even classify him as a non-citizen. So, and it's a whole situation of Griffin's a different circumstance. People are going to burn this place to the ground because of who he is. Like, they are just adamant about, like, right, he's an Apache. They already had their views of Callian, and so, right, like, but even Tom says that not everyone in town, like some people do want a trial. It's like, if there are people in the town who want a trial, they seem like few and far between. I mean, because everyone else seemed like, yeah, let's hang them. I mean, hell, they literally got the gallows and the rope ready. And you're like, Jesus Christ. I mean, like, he hasn't even, like, he's going to trial. He hasn't been found guilty yet. And they're already prepping to hang him. And Tom's justification is, I don't agree with it, but I'd rather them focus their anger on setting up this rope rather than, like, burning, like, the police station down. And it's just like, that's not a better solution. I'm like, that's jacked up. It's like, I mean, the whole point is supposed to be innocent until proven guilty, But now the question then becomes like, well, was that even a thing at this point in time? It's like no, if you're believed to be guilty, you're guilty, So that's the tough uphill battle that Abby has for herself, especially considering Callian can't remember what happened. He saw his sister, but he doesn't believe he killed Francis, but he doesn't believe he did, but he doesn't remember, so that doesn't help him at all. And especially when you have Luis being there being like, yeah, like, I found him over my dead father's body, so it's like he looks guilty as sin. It is one of his arrows that was used. So obviously Abby and Gus went to talk to the leader of Callian tribe to kind of tell him, like, maybe get the rest of the camp away from get further away from town right now, because they already have issue with Callian. They're going to retaliate against his people just to make a point. So but when it actually does go to trial, which I was actually surprised, because even Callian was like, there's no one out here. And it's like, right, the guy who's avoided town so much now, because of all the people, now suddenly wants an audience. Because I think for him it seemed suspicious. I was kind of worried. I'm like, is someone going to come out and attack you? But no one did. I guess most people who cared were already in the courtroom. But I halfway expected people to be out there just to kind of spit and throw stuff at you, and they didn't. But I guess it's like, yeah, Tom kind of put them in their place of like, yeah, you want to do something? Like, we're going to have an issue. This is going to go by a trial. Because he's also like, people love and respect him as a sheriff, so they're going to listen to him. So it's like, right, the sheriff is willing to give him, like, I guess for them, it's like, right, this just proves how much of a good man Tom Davidson is, that he's willing to give this guilty as sin person a chance at trial. So, and obviously, Luis went on the stand, but the moment he went on the stand, you could tell that look in Hoyt's face. He saw his fingers. I was like, what did you notice, Hoyt? He knew something was up. And I knew it was Luis. I knew it had to be, because the guys who stole, who were, when Francis and Otis were dealing with the cattle and stuff, they were saying, like, last episode, like, right, some of these ranch hands were there, but they left at that time. So these might be people that might have something to do with Liam's death. So it's like, the fact is they're working on the ranch seems suspicious. So it's like, so I was like, why is no one bringing that up necessarily? Because I guess there's no direct, I guess it's like, hey, these are ranchers who just found their way on the ranch and just kind of like, they probably just, hey, we're here for work, and probably kind of hid who they really were. Maybe that's the justification. Either way. So when it's all said and done, like, Hoyt could immediately tell like something was off. And Abby's point of view was trying to make people see who Callion is, that he is a man who's been through great trauma. And I love, like, obviously, love, it feels weird to say love, but like, I think it's so powerful when he kind of speaks about the fact is, he's like, 15 years ago, I came to you guys for help when my sister was taken. None of you believed me, but now, when your children go missing, what happens? You come to me to help you find them, because you know I'm me, that I never give up. And the fact is, it's like, at no point, you all want to condemn me, but at no point did any one of you actually ask me, did I actually do it? The only people who asked that question were Abby and Gus. They're the only ones that were trying to prove his innocence, trying to wanted to believe in him. But he's like, after everything I've done for this town, you're immediately willing to, like, you won't even give me the benefit of the doubt, because first and foremost, what comes first is the fact is I'm going to patch you. It doesn't matter what I've done for you, you know? I mean, regardless of what he's done for this town, he still avoided this town before now. Like, Abby's the only reason why he really, like, sticks around the town now. So, and I think that's heartbreaking. That is like, and for Callion, like, he tears up, because it's just kind of like, it is this frustrating thing. And even the judge is like, wow, you've been through a lot and you've done a lot for independence. I see the good nature of a man who is like, despite the terrible things that have happened to him, he took that and he did good with that pain. But letter of the law, everything points to you being guilty. So I'm sorry. May God have mercy on your soul. But Hoyt went out and confronted Luis, because Luis is like, oh, how dare he stand up there asking for forgiveness? I saw him shoot my father. And Hoyt's like, look at your fingers. Like, you know why you're so bad at poker? You have a tail. And he's like, that tail, I saw it on the stand, and I also saw it here right now. First, you said you stood over your father's body after Callion already killed him, and now you're claiming you saw him Callion shoot your father. Which one is it? And Hoyt, like, popped off on him, because it's like, right, his father, apparently Luis's dad blamed him for the cattle being missing. He's like, that's not on me. And I'm like, well, the way they talk about it later on, it seems like it actually was. They had to have, like, I guess, inside help. Like, I figured this was more so about the Hoyt thing last episode, because the way he was kind of looking back at Hoyt like that, I'm like, I knew, it seemed off. Like, I didn't know if Hoyt was at the heart of that, whereas, like, he was kind of true, because I figured he was probably thinking, like, Francis treated Hoyt more like a son than he did, because he was willing to cut him out. It's like, right, you leave this all behind, you get you're dead to the family, essentially. And in a rage, him and his father struggled over it, and he accidentally shot his dad. But he saw an opportunity. And the way Callion was holding his head last episode, I was like, didn't it seem like he got attacked or something? Because he was holding his head. But it's like, because Callion probably thought that was just part of, like, his daze or whatever. Like, oh, my head's hurting. I don't know. Because he was in a daze at the time that Luis hit him. Took one of his arrows and stabbed it in his father's chest just to set up Callion. And for Luis, it's like, right, you're not his son, no matter how much you want it to be. But for that pissed Hoyt off me more, it's like, but you didn't realize how much of a, like, the fact is you didn't realize and you took for granted how lucky you are to have such a father in your life, such a caring father. You know, it's like, right, you were up to some shady shit and your father called you out for it, you know? Whether he, you know, because they, like I said, it implies, like, no, he was a part of it, hence the ranchers and everything. So it's like, yeah, you were a part of this, because I don't know whether he thought, like, hey, the Davidsons are giving us money and we could do a lot with this money. So yeah, I'm sliding a little cattle here and there so my family can still keep afloat, but I'm also potentially getting paid off by the Davidsons or something. I don't know. We don't know what his motive would be to help them out, but especially because he's screwing over his family in the process. But and maybe because even I think before was it Lucia ended up leaving, she was talking about like, yeah, you and Dad were arguing all day, and so like Hoyt was like punching Louise, and it was her telling him to stop, like no more. And he brought him before like everyone because they were seconds away from hanging. Was seconds away from hanging Callian, and obviously Gus was overhearing this, and so he went to the body. The arrow was pulled out, but the bullet wasn't. And I was like, oh, so they stopped. Like, I guess it's like, right, we found our guy, it's guilty. Like, they didn't do an autopsy, and like, the fact is they didn't look deeper. Like, if they had, they would have, I mean, obviously you gotta know you're looking for a bullet, but still, it's like, man. But it's like, right, they didn't bother checking. They pulled the arrow out, but they never bothered checking, like, I mean, I guess the arrow was enough to cover up, like, any bullet wound. Like, the arrow had probably, like, skewed the bullet wound to make it seem like, oh, it's just an arrow wound, you know? So, it makes sense why you wouldn't be looking. But I'm like, yeah, the fact is, if Gus, all he had to do was stick his fingers in there, he found the bullet. Didn't even have to cut open Reyes in the end. But I'm like, the fact is that happened, that makes you go, someone should have been doing a better job, but they didn't, so... And Callian almost died for. But what was also surprising is the fact is that Tom is the one, before Hoyt and Gus even got there, he had already cut them down, the noose off, because for him, it was like, for Callian, the thing is that, for him, it's like, there is no death, there's only basically a changing of worlds. So it's like you're just transitioning into a new world. There is no like death because there is another kind of like, yeah, there's an afterlife. You're transitioning into a new world, and that's kind of where you're going to be living. That's going to be the form you're in. So, but the fact is, Tom, like in that moment, that's what's the confusing thing about Tom. He can do good while also doing all the terrible, bad, and manipulative stuff he's doing. That's what's so confusing. Like, what made you decide to save Callian in it? And I think everything from what Abby was saying about the good-natured person that he was, plus maybe the conversation with Kate being like, oh, here you are standing above it all, aren't you? And I guess, like, yeah, because he had that conversation with Abby about, right, and yeah, it's this legal stuff, reasonable doubt, yeah, that'll all work in a courtroom in Boston, but not here when you're at the edge of the world where people want justice. You know, it's kind of like, because even he admits, like, yeah, I used to not follow the letter of the law. You know, I kind of, like, I didn't bother, you know, prior to me becoming a lawman. So, I don't know what really pushed him to decide to do that. Once again, it was before Hoyt or Gus got there, you know? And, like, as he already cut the rope, and then Hoyt and Gus showed up. That's why I was like, that's so interesting. But, Callian was spared, and, obviously he thanks Abby because it's like, right, you saved my life. Like, you know, you tried your best. And obviously for her, it's like, yeah, but a judge didn't feel like it was good enough. But he's like, it wasn't the judge that you needed to convince. Like, regardless of how some people feel, there are people who are thinking differently now because of you, Abby. So you were able to kind of change some hearts and minds in this episode. So what you did still mattered in the long run. Even if I probably would have died, like, you still got people looking and thinking differently. Now that I am proven innocent, it makes that even more true. I even loved Hoyt apologizing, like, yeah, I shouldn't have stayed away. But he's like, hey, Hoyt, you saved my life. And it's like, oh, I saved your life, so does that mean I owe you? And he was like, I said you helped, you know, so that's good, you know. I was hoping Hoyt would kind of like be like the deciding factor in helping with that, and obviously Gus doing what he could to help as well. So, and I even love that line from Gus. It's like, sometimes he feels like he should leave this town. It's like, why am I fighting so hard for a town? A town that's willing to do that to you would do it to me too. Like, if I was accused of something like that, I would not get the benefit of the doubt either in this town. Yeah, I fight so hard for it. So it's like, yeah, there's a part of me that's like, I should leave with you. But then Callion's like, there's a part of you that also says that you should stay because this town needs you, because you are, at the heart of it, you are a good person, Gus. You are a good person, and that this town needs you. It is better with you in it. So we probably won't be seeing Callion for a while, like whether that means like the rest of the season or just for a couple episodes. But it's like, yeah, this gives him an opportunity to finally move forward and back to be there for his people, especially after this. It's like, yeah, kind of awkward hanging around town, so it's like he needed a reason to go back and more so focus on his people. So, but I love him seeing his sister, and it's kind of her waving and be like, oh, it's time for us to, we're both free. And he's like, yeah, he does see his sister, but he's like, yeah, she's in the air now, like, because the reason why he saw her is like she was always his guide, but he was also, because she was held back by his guilt. He blamed himself. It's like, but you were a boy at the time. There was only so much you could have done in that situation. And like, even if you had like saved your sister at that time, there were so many people attacking you at the time. Like, there were always going to be more, even if you get tracked down that person, So that guilt is what held on. He was holding on to that guilt for so long, and now he's finally able to let his sister rest by like letting her go. She's in the air now, but it's like almost like she will always be there. But he's finally freeing himself of his guilt about it. So I thought that was beautifully done. Sibling stuff, man. Once again, pain and trauma. This has been a week of pain and trauma, like specifically, obviously, like movie and TV show wise. Obviously, I keep referencing it in a lot of reviews just because it's like, man, so much kind of like correlates and kind of connects with Wakanda Forever, and it's kind of wild. So, but yeah, so we probably won't be seeing Callion for a while. Gus had made it clear to Abby, he's like, hey, when this is all settled, I need to find out why Abby Walker decided to come to Independence. So I guess in Callion's stead, maybe she'll work with Gus. It's like, well, he is close to the sheriff, but he does have his suspicions because Callion has brought that up the past episode, 2 episodes ago, about like, hey, well, the end of 2 episodes ago, but obviously mainly in last episode about it being Tom's the one who killed Liam. So we'll see what ends up happening on that front, how Abby decides to handle that. But speaking of all of that too, Hoyt had listened to Callion and was like, right, he's gonna be there for Louise and her mom, because it's like, right, not only did they lose Francis, but also now Louise too, because did I say Louise before? I think I meant to say Lucia, but Louise ended up. I hope I haven't been making that mistake the entire review. There's a good chance I have. I do apologize if I have been making that mistake. But with Luis and Luis is in jail now. Now whether he's going to get fully blown hung, I don't know. They'll probably just keep him locked up for the point of his crime. Because if that is the case, it makes you go like, huh. Would he have gotten, maybe they're just taking the death sentence off the board because it's like, right, it's one of the founder's children, it was an accident, but he still covered up the crime and was pinning it on someone else, and maybe, like, his mom and sister tried to wanted leniency, so he'll just be in jail and not, like, hung. Maybe that's what's going on there. We'll have to wait and see. Well, who knows if we'll get, like, a definitive answer on that. That's kind of my thought process, but either way, Hoyt plans on sticking around because he wants to be there for them, He would already made that decision after Francis died. It's like, right, because especially the conversations he had with Francis last episode, I think really solidified that for him. So I think all of her worries about Hoyt, I think, were kind of expunged, at least for now. Like, right, he's going to stick around. So Abby might not even have Hoyt as much anymore just because he's helping out at the Reyes Ranch now. But maybe he can still be helped. I think Abby's biggest proponent that she's going to have on her side now is Kate. Because Kate's wondering about the Ethan thing, and then she talks to Ethan, and he's like, yeah, like, this Tom Davidson doesn't seem much like the cold-blooded killer you made him out to be. And then the two of them shake hands, and it's like, she's like, oh, is this your first time meeting? And they act like it is, and she's like, I know, I call bullshit, I know I saw you shaking hands last episode. So now it is a situation, and I love that he's like, oh, like, she's offering to shave him. I'm like, oh yeah. And she holds him up, she's like, all right, so why are you lying? And he's like, I also love the next time we see him, he's like, did you have to cut off my mustache? She's like, that's been annoying me for a while, so I'm doing you a favor by doing it. But it's like, what is going on? So the Pinkertons don't work for the government. They lost their government contract, and now they're working basically railroad related stuff. And now that involves kind of working in tandem with the Davidsons. And for her, it's like, because it seems like Kate's got her issues. Like something went down in Baltimore that I guess apparently she potentially didn't handle well. So this job here in Independence was supposed to be her opportunity to kind of redeem herself a little bit more in the agency's eyes. But for her, it's like, wait, we are working with these people. Like, we're supposed to be looking after the people, not working with the corruption. Like, obviously, we presented the fact is there's something going on with the Davidsons, but now we're working with them. It's like, yeah, I'm told that I have to basically report to Tom if there's any like concerns that he should be worried about. So Ethan says like, right, I didn't tell him about you being a detective, but at the end of the day, you better be careful because if he finds out, you're going to be a whole heap of trouble. But she tells Ethan at the end like, oh, if I get found out, I will burn that agency to the ground. I will let the people and everyone know what you're up to and who you're backing. And he's just like, well, it was really nice seeing you, Kate. He's kind of got this smug look on his face. And so, like, this job meant a lot to her, but it's just kind of like, right, this badge isn't, it's an interesting parallel of just kind of, Gus is kind of in that same department where like this badge has its own complications, and it's like for her, she wanted to do good, she wanted to help out people, but it's like right that corrupt system just kind of hits on both fronts of that badge for both Gus and Kate. So it's just Kate just kind of, but it's like regardless of it, we will solve Liam's murder, and we will also expose the Davidsons for who they are. They just don't have the Pinkerton backing anymore, so they're kind of on their own. Like I said, Callahan's going for a while. Hoyt might be as well, so at the very least, it might just be them for a while. We don't know. Or the quartet is now potentially a trio, a temporary trio until like Hoyt might, once again, his responsibilities at the Reyes' ranch may keep him away from helping Abby and everything. So we'll see in the long run what ends up happening on that front. But then there's also the Tom situation. He got stabbed and he patched himself up, but he's not getting medical attention. So it is a situation of like, yeah, and he's coughing up blood later. So you're like, yeah, that wound probably got super, super infected because he probably never like properly closed it up. He just like wrapped it up, it seems. Like he probably didn't disinfect it, probably didn't stitch it. But the ironic situation they find themselves at the end where Abby's on top of and he's like, oh, help me, Abby. And he's like, well, the easiest thing to do would be let the bastard die. But it's like, regardless of it, it's like, this is what you want. Hell, you tried to go for it in episode 1, but it's like, you had this opportunity. But I think for her, there's so much else at play here. Like, someone else might come into the room at the time, and before she had time to really let him lay there and die, it's like, all right. But she might also spare him because she wants him to face justice for what he's done. Especially because they're in a place like this, which is on the edge of the world where, like, yeah, people can kind of do whatever they want, So that's probably an extra element to it about how, like, she probably wouldn't want him to face justice, especially in a place like this where he is loved, where he is trusted, where kind of you're able to kind of get away with a lot more than you probably should be able to. But obviously things are kind of changing on that front, especially for Abby, because she's found a kind of much like Kate, she found something special in this place and she's not willing to kind of let it go. Because she's also probably trying to figure out, there's still the Liam of it all. Like, why did Liam accept that $7,500? What were they running from in Boston? Like, why did he, whatever his reasonings, like, but the Davidsons were able to kind of pay him off for. So there's a lot she needs to find out about Liam, and keeping Tom around might be the next best thing to do. So we'll see how this all plays out next episode, ultimately where all this ends up taking us. But really, that's all I want to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and good